All right, let's just dive right into this explainer. Bizarre diets and buried secrets, the reality of the ancient world. You know, we usually picture the ancient world through this lens of pristine marble statues and grand pyramids, right? But the actual truth, it is way grittier. It's sometimes genuinely terrifying, and honestly, it's always completely fascinating. Today, we are peeling back those polished layers of history. We're going to look at everything from some seriously bizarre, stomach-turning diets to the cutting-edge science of archaeology that lets us dig up these buried secrets. It's going to be a pretty wild ride, so let's get into it. So, what was actually on the menu in the ancient world? To really kick things off, we've got to ask that simple but honestly kind of terrifying question. What did ancient people actually eat when they got hungry? Because I promise you, way before the days of modern agriculture and 24/7 supermarkets, dinner time was completely different depending on exactly where you lived. We're talking about survival and customs that will literally make your jaw drop. Just look at this massive contrast. On one side, you had a normal diet. Ancient Egyptians were casually snacking on raw, salted fish. And the Babylonians, they would actually dry their fish out, crush it up in a mortar, and bake it right into their bread. A little strange to us today, maybe, but, perfectly reasonable. But then, on the extreme end, in certain ancient tribes deep in South America, the menu took a really dark turn toward ritualistic cannibalism. And the sheer brutality of these cannibalistic rituals, it went way beyond just getting a meal. It was deeply woven into their beliefs. When they captured an enemy, or even if they decided to sacrifice one of their own leaders, the victim would be tied up and crushed on a massive tree trunk. And while this was happening, the women of the tribe would circle around, screaming and singing in this frenzied celebration before consuming the remains. But here is the most chilling part, hands down. In some tribes, if a husband was killed, his widow was forced to participate. They would literally tie her fingers together to make a spoon, and she had to use that spoon to eat her own husband's flesh. Just an absolutely astonishing, horrifying glimpse into ancient tribal life. Okay, so after hearing something that shocking, you really have to wonder, how do archaeologists even know these dark secrets from thousands of years ago? It's not like we have video footage. What we do have are echoes. Things like ancient cave paintings left behind as clues, kind of setting the stage for archaeological discovery. But finding and actually interpreting these echoes, that is where the genius of modern science comes in. It basically comes down to some brilliant detective work. First, they study ancient folklore. Scientists read old texts from early writers like Herodotus to find hints about where lost cities used to be. Step 2 is so clever. They look for darker vegetation. Grass growing over buried ruins is actually richer and darker than the grass around it. Step 3, they use aerial photography to spot those subtle differences from the sky. And step 4, math. An archaeologist can measure a single broken column base and accurately reconstruct the size of an entire lost structure. But the investigation doesn't stop at dirt and stones. Modern archaeologists use medical science to unlock secrets hidden literally inside ancient bodies. A perfect example is the groundbreaking work done by Dr. Candela's team from Brooklyn University. They tested ancient remains, looking past just the bones to find actual biological fingerprints. 5,000. To show you exactly how precise this gets, Dr. Candela's team tested the tissue of 130 Egyptian mummies to find their blood types, and they successfully extracted exact blood types like A and B from remains that were 5,000 years old. Even crazier, it was a perfect match with the blood types of people walking the streets of Cairo today. 5,000 years later, our core biology is still exactly the same. All right, moving on to our next section, the familiar end, the birth of the Olympics. Let's get into it. So let's look at this timeline. It maps out the incredible journey of the Games. They started way back in 776 BC in ancient Greece. For a millennium, it was the absolute peak of athletic achievement. But then, in 394 AD, the Games were completely canceled, just banned. It actually wasn't until the year 1900 AD, over 1,500 years later, that they were finally revived in Athens, kicking off the global spectacle we all watch today. Now, the ancient games were a bit different than what we see on TV today. It was a massive, exhausting 5-day duration. You had running, jumping, wrestling, chariot racing. But here's the wild part. The games were so respected that there was a complete halt to warfare. All fighting stopped just so they could play sports. Imagine that happening today. And the grand prize for the winners? No multi-million-dollar deals. They received an olive wreath and a lifetime pension from their home city. That's it. And for sure, boxing has ancient roots.
It was a massive staple of these ancient games. We tend to think of boxing as a newer prize-fighting thing, but its origins are buried deep in antiquity. It was even famously documented by the poet Homer in the Iliad. People have literally been gathering to watch athletes test their physical limits against each other for thousands of years.
Which really leaves us with this final question. When future archaeologists dig up our ruins, what weird habits will they uncover about us? We've used aerial photography and medical science to uncover their bizarre diets and glorious games. But thousands of years from now, when they dig through our concrete and plastic, what are they going to think was absolutely insane about us? And what will they recognize as purely human? Something to think about. Thanks for exploring this explainer with me today, and I'll catch you next time.